to Lugnut TV, again stealing you away for this week's podcast. I am Jeff Wood, joined by my co-host Katie Dugas. Say hi, Katie.
Hi.
All right, well, Richmond is the topic of, discussion, getting out of that rough week. But before we do, John was nice enough to create a new logo for me, so I'm going to pop that into transition. Bam, that's there. It's a nice looking logo. Hopefully everyone sees it. But we'll get on with things. So, Katie, what a week we had. And week number 3, across the board, everyone was at Richmond. It didn't get better till the end, and still, at that point, there was a lot of cautioning. We go to Thursday, I think there was 13 cautions on that night. Still a full load of trucks, and we thank everyone for coming out. But I don't know, track conditions, setup, people with not maybe too much experience on Richmond. I don't know what the problem was. Could you point out anything?
I mean, nothing's super significant. I mean, I know Richmond's a short track, so some people are gonna struggle with it, but all in all, I still think we're in the early stages. A lot of these guys haven't run together for a long time. I'm gonna say it that way because maybe they're not used to each other's driving style. Maybe they're not used to what they can and can't do. And I'll say that in a broadcast, and I'll say it on here. You have to be familiar with some of the people you're running with because there might be one driver, and I mean, I'm not going to pick one in particular, but let's throw Top out there for example. You might know him for being known from running from the absolute top of the track all the way to the bottom. Once you get used to knowing that somebody's going to do that, you might not be as brave to try to run a midline through somebody like that. But we have so many guys in this league. I mean, the numbers have been astronomical to me. I guess coming in late in the season, I didn't really realize there were that many people. So, I mean, I realize that as the season goes on, some of that's going to drop off. People aren't going to be as gung ho to show up every week as they are now. But I think until we get to the point of, learning where you can and can't go, or, maybe just not to be so aggressive so early on. I mean, running like it's the end of the race in lap number 2. I mean, come on, guys. We know that's all going to be disastrous.
Truer words can't be said. So, it was just, I don't think it was the best show Loose Lugnuts could have put on, but still, it was a show, and it was dominated by the guy that I thought was going to win it. Kevin Winter wins trucks. So obviously, let's talk about the drop part. Now, after 3 races, we get a drop due to California, and only because of the week of California that we had there. So points, it's not going to be up here on the picture screen or whatnot, but Justin Michael, Mitch Reeves, Kevin Winter, all tied for first down with the drop. I think poor Mitch Reeves and Justin Michael both had to drop like a 5th place finish or something. That's how great those two have been doing. That pales in comparison to what, like Kevin Winter, who had to drop like I think a 17th place finish. It's different, but so the top 3 are deadlocked at, I believe on Danelise it says 128 points. I believe that's right. Uh, 4th place will be Kyle Chadwick, obviously having all but one top 10 finish so far through 12 races. Jeff Gilmore's there. That guy's silent. He will be at there if he maintains these runs. He'll be there at the end of the season. Keith Haney, he's an inch away from a win. Brandon Murray, who's doing great in the trucks, good finishes. He's got 2 top 10s at 3 races. Jack Watts, and we'll talk about him a little bit later too, being silent but always there. He's got 2 top 10 finishes in the trucks. Randy Arms, 2 top 10 finishes in the trucks. He's in 9th place. Not his best one. I think Xfinity's probably his best run so far, maybe even Cup. So, and then Brian Abbott and Ray Richard. And there's a ton of guys just sitting out of the top 10 in points overall with the 35 to 43 truck fields. We're going to see flip-flops from, heck, maybe even 7th place down to 20th place in points week to week. And also depends on which drivers want to run. And our next drop race is not till after Watkins Glen, which is probably week 11. Beyond that, Katie, I think the points are pretty good, but still uncertain unless you're probably that top three.
Yeah. And I mean, you said it. We're still so early on. I mean, there are going to be things change. Obviously, things happen in life to where, something pops up. Hey, man, I'm not going to be able to make it. And I've seen where one race can make all the difference. Last year, I know some of our champions, after I interviewed them after the fact, were just like, I may not have had the greatest of finishes, but I was consistent, showing up every week, every week, every week. So, like I said, it could be hard. And you have people like Randy and Kevin who have babies coming in January, February, right there at the end of things. So I think that could be a shakeup, right there at the end too.
Yeah, that's always a shakeup. Drivers having kids in real life. So, uh, I know kids. Katie knows kids as well. They like to interfere with even broadcasters. I hear sometimes Katie's kids on the weekends there, and my kid's sitting just across from me on the other side of the desk at this very moment as we tape this podcast. So we continue on with the story of Richmond. We move into Saturday, and that another high caution field race, Katie. The same thing. You can't compound it more. You know, people just not having a handle on the car. I think the car was more drivable on Saturday. However, uh, it still produced the same thing. We'll go over the points real quick. Obviously, still not on the screen. Randy Arms actually has the points lead by 1 point. He actually didn't have a drop race. I think he missed Vegas. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong, Katie. Missed Vegas last week.
He was doing an enduro race last week.
Yeah, so missing Vegas. So he doesn't have a drop race, so he has two full races that he can put up. He's in first by 1 point. Bonus point attached already, I believe. And the only bonus point you can receive is a win, and they go with you into the playoff sector. Keith Haney, like I said, probably his and Randy Arms' best vehicle are the Xfinity cars. They're there. Mitch Reeves with only 2 races. I'm not sure how long he'll be doing Xfinity or for how much long he'll be in that top 10, but he's third in points. Uh, Jeff Mert, fourth in points. Ronald Klein has to be obviously his best series, Katie, because I mean, we've bubble wrapped his car. We've talked about Ron as a driver versus an admin. Admin, he does everything possible he can. Driver, he has to be frustrated, but fifth in points in the Xfinity Series, 117 points. Mark Jackson and Brandon Thornhill, both tied for sixth. Mark Jackson's been having an incredible run lately. Brandon Thornhill, probably a little bit sneaky on my mind, but it's still probably his better running. Kyle Chadwick with a outside of the top 10 finish this week in the Xfinity side, eighth in points. Rob Haynes, who will be there at the end if he continues to run well enough, he's ninth in points. Jason Lance, a guy that just runs Saturday Xfinity, he's 10th in points. So watch out for those. Trent Trum's just right out of that picture. He's moved up, 18 spots due to the drop race scenario. Topper's moved up a ton of spots. Travis Browder, who's been having terrible, terrible finishes, he's moved up a ton of spots. Just keep in mind on that board. Let's move over to the Cup side, Katie. And I mean, you can agree or disagree here, but I think that was the better of the races there this weekend.
Absolutely agree.
All right, so I mean, it. Poor Daniel Smallwood. I mean, Saturday dominated a race, Sunday dominated a race, but unable to finish it. And Randy takes both, I believe, both wins Saturday and Sunday there on Richmond. And it was phenomenal racing, especially if we could go back and look at the end, and you can on Max Speed TV, go rewatch that race. We had a ton of live viewers, ton of views by the end of midnight. I think we were hitting 150 plus views. It's great to see that out there from that stuff. Uh, let's see. I'm gonna throw up the sponsor there, Bruzy, real quick. Go check out a Bruzy too. But
Your way or your way.
your way, your way. getting that ingrained in my head too. But that last 3-lap pass there from Randy Arms, calculated. There was very little nudging. It was just enough to get past him and secure the lead. And Daniel Smallwood even tried to get back, but what a race there at the end. What a race at the beginning too. I think we only had like 6 or 7 cautions, and that's saying something, seeing that was like halving from the previous 2 races.
It was actually phenomenal finish both nights when it comes down to it. I mean, it wasn't exactly a photo finish, but it was, I'm gonna say it was pretty damn close.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Zach McSwain on Saturday. Going back to the Xfinity thing, he doesn't race too often over here on the asphalt side, but when he does close out races and finishes them for the most part. So got that going on, and Randy Arms 2 wins away. Let's go over points real quick for the Cup side of things, and we'll look at all that together. Uh, Justin Michael and Daniel Smallwood actually tied for the lead, which is probably good, seeing that Daniel Smallwood has put down a ton of time. Kyle Chadwick third. Mitchell Reeves, this is the one he needs to probably improve on a little bit, but 3 top 5 for Mitchell Reeves with no win, though, so he's outside of the points loop by 1 point, tied with Kyle Chadwick for that 3rd spot. 3 top 5s, still can't get a lead there. Randy Arms with the win, like we said, that will really bump him up. He hasn't finished outside the top 10 in all 3 races in the Cup side of things. Keith Haney's there. Mark Jackson, again, like I said, having tremendous momentum these last 4 races. Bob Wells is still there in 8th place in points. He missed Richmond, but had 2 phenomenal top 10 finishes on the Cup side of things for the first 2 weeks. Tyler Needham, gosh, I'm going to say the number 20. I think his brother Brandon's the 21. I'm not really sure. They always confuse me. Tyler Needham's 9th in points. He's only running the Cup side of things. He's there, and Jack Watts once again shows up in the points. Just outside that top 10 is Brian Abbott, Ken Richardson, Jeff Gilmore, Kevin Fetty, Jeff Merck, Top's moving up, Brandon Murray's moving up. So, like I said, a little bit early to talk too much points. However, we are going into a pretty fun week here, Katie. We got the Halloween race coming up. I think this is your first season of in special events going on. You're obviously a sponsor on Saturday nights and whatnot, but it's a unique prize. It's our champions, and each 3 divisions get a car, a die-cast car from John Hendrick from Over the Top Paints and Designs. Link in description there. It's the most unique prize I can think of. I know you get to see a lot more leagues than I do nowadays. Most of the prizes out there are monetary gains, cash, iRacing credits. This trophy alone, and for the special event race on Halloween, the winner will get a Halloween diecast from Loose Lugnuts Racing. So, have you seen anything close out there that gets anywhere near this?
Not even close. And getting to see them at the end of last season, I was like, all right, Top, you got to do what you got to do. I want one of these in my race room. So if there's any extra pressure, I mean, it's not coming from me, obviously, but these things are phenomenal. And when you look at some of this up close personal details that John can do, I know Jeremy Capron, one of the bigger guys on dirt, when he won our Lugnut Dirt Series tour, he stayed and purposely showed up every week because he wanted that diecast. And he ended up taking our championship. But he'll tell you that is the reason he stayed. Not only was the racing great, but he wanted that diecast.
Most unique prize out there, and a little bit of news coming out of this week going forward on Saturday nights. Katie's gonna have a new partner in crime up there in the booth, and that'll be Josh Medlock from Max Speed TV covering the Xfinity side of things on Pit Pass. So, Katie, I mean, it sounded I told you, it sounded like hee haw up there. 2 Southern people talking shop about racing. It was a good cast up there. I'm looking forward to more. What you looking at?
I was waiting to hear you say hee haw, because if you didn't, I was going to throw you under the bus. But this guy has so much energy. I cannot even begin to describe to y'all. It was such a fun broadcast, and we got to cut up the whole time. And yes, we are both very Southern, but his accent's still way stronger than mine. But still a fantastic time. Great race. Was a lot of fun to call. You know, he actually said some of the guys in the league are people that he has known from, I'm gonna say, way back in the day. So he got to have a good time and cut up with some guys. And if you have never heard a more exciting finish, you should go listen to this guy call the last lap of that race. It was pretty insane.
All right. Again, thanks to Josh Medlock. Also going into the future, we'll see what's up with that. Go check out the Pit Pass Xfinity Series on Saturday nights now on MaxSpeed TV. So again, uh, we're doing the Halloween stuff. If you're listening to this and you're interested in it, I believe Ron in 3 different posts though put out the drivers that need to race and are locked in. So need to race, you need to go out and do the race on Friday night, and that includes Ronald Klein himself and Travis Browder. Uh, Previous winners of diecasts need to qualify. It just makes it harder for people to get multiple diecasts out there. So that's a new rule for this season going forward. I think there's only maybe 2 other guys out there that are still with the league that aren't racing right now that would qualify under. So let's switch it up. Richmond was fun. Let's talk some NASCAR, and I think the last time we talked about NASCAR was a little bit different. We were talking about Talladega and Kansas. Now we're over here uh, at Martinsville. Let's go over the Martinsville side of things before we get anywhere close to talking about what somewhat me and Katie did a little bit off air. Katie, it was a great race. It was short track racing. You're gonna have some cautions and whatnot. You're gonna have some people ticked off, whatever. Uh, Martin Truex Jr. A great win. Locks himself into the top 4 to get to where he is. He couldn't have done much better. Second place, I think, was the number 9, and he was running them down at the end. It was a great ending to maybe I think total of 10 to 14 cautions around that at Martinsville. I couldn't. I thought the race was pretty good, exciting up and down, but unfortunately, again, after race crap takes over the entire race and takes away from the spotlight of the winner and top 10, and not to mention the 2 drivers that we're about to talk about were inside that top 10 even after their incidents. So obviously, if you haven't figured it out, we're talking about Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin. Maybe Denny squeezed them. I don't really know. They were having a nice conversation, Katie, and Logano did like a little push slap and walked away like, you know, like a big old fu and pushed him. And if he thought that was going to be the end of it, I don't know what Logano was thinking. It, drivers, if they need to fight, they just need to be able to fight, in my opinion. Short track style racing here at home. If the officers that are watching the race don't use their tasers, I don't consider it a good fight at a local track anymore. I don't know, Katie.
They always say it's $50 if you fight in a parking lot, but $100 if you fight on the front stretch. Back where I'm from, and I mean, you got a lot of egos and a lot of different personalities when it comes to a racetrack. I personally, and I'm not speaking names, but somebody in my household, I know has had his fair share of, you know, punches thrown at a racetrack or wherever. And we had this conversation in the Misfit channel the other night. Thornhill even, saying, hey man, it happens. It's part of it. It's part of racing. But I think these guys come from 2 different backgrounds personally, and this is just my input. I believe Denny Hamlin grew up, having to stand up for himself. If somebody went and messed with him, he's not going to take there's probably little ears, so I'm gonna say he's not gonna take the crap that a lot of people would. He's, man, you want me? Come at me. Let's go. Here we go. But Logano, I feel like, kind of just sits back, and I don't know if he would have people, take over that fight for him. And I hope people
They
don't judge me
did.
for this, but I see Logano as a little bit of a sissy, whereas I would look at Denny Hamlin more of a man's man. So to go up and, push a guy on the shoulder like that, you can't expect any different. Now, the pit crew guy who came up from behind him and body slammed him, different story. That's NASCAR's ball game. But to me as a female, you can't go up to a grown man and push him or nudge him or do whatever on the shoulder and then just turn your back and walk off and not expect some kind of repercussion. I mean, men are men. There's testosterone there. I'm going to say it. They're crazy. They have a little more temper than us. So I think Denny Hamlin personally should have thrown at least a punch or two back, but I guess that was his professionalism coming out. He didn't go there, but he was ready for it.
Nah, he was definitely gonna walk him down. You went over that crewman that got suspended. He definitely deserved to be suspended. As my kid pipes up in the background, it just he like went over the top with it. I don't think even both drivers made contact after Logano's push, and that's the thing. I want to point out two things. Like Ralph Earnhardt told Dale Senior one time that don't ever get out of the car when someone's angry. Whatever happens on the track happens on the track. And then there's the other side of things of it, and that's they're having a decent conversation, a legitimate conversation. Who did what? Where were you? I thought you were there. That's great. That's stuff that can be said outside of the car, in my opinion, without throwing fists. It ain't the '76 Daytona 500 or wherever it was. It just it boggles my mind that they couldn't fight it out on their own. Whatever Logano thought was gonna happen after he pushed him and walked away. There's even a picture of like Logano looking over his shoulder because the crew people like jumped on each other in between that scene where they zoom out. I don't know, just it's one of those weird things, and we should be talking about Truex, who I think won two of the three stages there and dominated a race, and you know cemented a top four spot. That's the thing. But once again, we're talking about some stupid thing off the track.
Best thing was I'd watched an interview early on during the week. Obviously I'm at home a lot. So I get to watch this series that comes on all the time called Glory Road, and Ray Everham is the host of it. And they did a special on Martinsville and, the legend behind the grandfather clock. And it focused a lot on some of your short track drivers when Jeff Gordon was dominating through this because they said it was because he came from the short track side of racing. And they talked a lot about Martin Truex Jr. because last year he wanted that win so bad, and it was right there, but he couldn't get it. So that was his ultimate goal, was to come in this week, win that clock, and then to see him get out of that car and, kind of slowly start watching his car roll away. You could see the genuine emotion and just passion in his eye because he wanted it so bad and didn't just, come in and spin somebody out on the last lap for a win. He took it and he dominated that whole race.
Yeah, and it goes back, and we're talking about our Halloween and the trophy and all that for loose lug nuts. You mentioned that grandfather clock too. That is a unique prize too. Jeff Gordon, I think, has an entire room dedicated in his house in Indiana to just his clocks.
I gotta say, I either one would not wind them up, or two, I would probably have a soundproof room because that's got to get loud.
Yeah, it's like the background of an ASN broadcast, Matt.
The infamous ASN clock. We know when it strikes 8 o'clock at the western seaboard of the United States of America.
Big shout out there to Matt for that one. It's unique. It's Matt and on ASN.
It's a staple. It really is.
All right. So that's Martinsville. Let's see what we got going forward. Who knows what the story's going to be next week? I looked over Dale Jr.'s podcast. That's a little bit between him and Rudd, and talk about Senior at some points. And I don't think they went over Martinsville too much because, Junior and Jeff Burton, uh, you know, both Redskin fans sitting there doing a Southern race there in Martinsville. What else you gonna say about that? Those guys saw the race. It wasn't much different. But me and
They
Katie,
actually never even got into the topic of the race. Watching this last night, they talked so much about Ricky's upbringing and some of the stuff that had happened with him and Dale coming up, and Gibbs and different things, that by the time it was time to wrap the podcast up, he said, "Man, we didn't even touch on half the points. So we're going to have to continue this another day."
yep, and that's a good conversation. Go check out Dale Earnhardt's Dirty Joe Media's there on YouTube, or find them elsewhere for their podcast. Uh, you know, me and Katie were talking about Jimmy Johnson, and with it being, along with the fight between Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano brought up the topic of Jimmy Johnson, and I think Jimmy Johnson, uh, much like I think, let's put it in perspective. When Jeff Gordon came into the scene, he was the start of a new era. Maybe Rusty Wallace might have been that start of a new era in the '80s. Who knows if you divide this up into who's who in NASCAR and when they started, when they finished. But I think it's safe to say Jimmy Johnson's the last bird of his era, and he's a 7-time champion, and he doesn't want to. Like you said, he doesn't want to go out on the bottom. He's gonna shoot for another championship. Look for a 6 to 10 win season to go out on, something like that. Something where he's competitive, but the style of driving that NASCAR is producing, the type of driver NASCAR is producing, win it or lose it type scenarios, really isn't Jimmy's racing. And a lot like, it took Gordon and maybe even Jimmy or Rusty or those guys of an era learning from the old people, like, you can't do this, can't do that. Heck, you even go back to Dale Earnhardt's podcast when he talks to the King, Richard Petty, and Richard Petty's out there telling Dale Sr. in the late '70s or early '80s how to drive and not to dive it 3-4 wide on the first lap at Martinsville. Those type of things that the King taught. I don't think those transferred after like 2010. I don't think drivers learned, Katie.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, we're dealing with an entirely different ball game. To me, this is not the NASCAR that it was when I was growing up. When I started watching NASCAR, it was still the Winston Cup. And I actually brought this up on our Saturday night broadcast. Josh said, "I don't watch NASCAR." He said, "I don't believe in the way it's run anymore. I don't like the stages. I don't like the points." And that's all personal preference. We have guys in our league who say the same thing. Jeff Merck does not watch as much NASCAR now because it's just not what it used to be. There's been so many changes, and yeah, you have stages and all this stuff. Bring back the wrecks, bring back the fights. I mean, ultimately, my 5-year-old will say it, you live to watch that kind of stuff. That stuff's fun. Excuse me, that stuff's fun. Well, not fun if they get hurt, obviously, but that's what makes for exciting racing. And I heard this was actually a podcast of Dale's a long time ago. He had Clint Boyer on there, and they were talking about all of the safety upgrades that they had done on these cars. And Clint Boyer was catching a lot of grief and a lot of slack because he said, "Bring back the cautions." I mean, I understand we need to be safe, he said, but if we're going out there and not tearing anything up, ultimately our viewership is going to drop. And at some point, you have to think, he is completely right. Yes, he still wants to be safe. He's strapping in every week going to do this. And he still wants to see more stuff get torn up, or, you know, make it to where it's interesting for our drivers, not just a bunch of guys going around either single file or double file. And the most excitement you see might be 3 wide going for a pass, not somebody spinning out going down the backstretch because somebody gets overly aggressive and mad.
And that's a good thing. And I can't remember. I do remember him saying, I just can't remember when also. But Clint Boyer's right. Outside of your regular, NASCAR viewership. You can go over why NASCAR's dropped. Obviously, they've gotten away from their southern roots, and that's bad to say. But when one company owns like 10 tracks that cover 20 races on the schedule, it's not going to work out well for those small tracks in the South that can't put 100,000 seats down. Obviously, NASCAR ain't hitting those numbers no more, but that's the way it went back then. A little bit off topic, maybe a topic for later time. Why NASCAR's decline, and for those guys out there that don't watch NASCAR anymore, I started just watching NASCAR again recently. I still take my nap on Sundays during it too, but it's basically for this podcast a little bit of memory and who does what, and normally I can just catch that reading up on the internet or something if I don't want to watch the race. But I agree totally. It's hard to watch with stages. It's not competitive, and if a driver is correct in the stature of looking at a race of outside of your southern viewership, you need to tear up a car or two. He's probably right. You got to get that Sports Center highlight or whatever you want to call it. It just needs to be there for the outside viewership to go, oh, that was a heck of a wreck. What's this NASCAR thing they got going on? Like what it did in the 80s and 90s to turn heads. I mean, obviously the safety standards you were talking about weren't there. It's just, I don't know. That statement I find factually correct, and that's what it is. So, but let's move on from our NASCAR and to our Pit Pass segment here. Pit Pass Power Rankings. Weekly Power Rankings brought to you by Pit Pass with Katie Dugas. We're going to talking about these every week that we can going up, and obviously there's going to be a week of stuff that we don't have here going forward because the Halloween race. But let's talk about who's got it going on with Katie. So go ahead and take this one away, Katie.
All right. So, like I said in my post, I don't want this to be offensive to anybody by any means. This was something fun that got brought up, and it's not based on my end. It is not based off of points. It is strictly what I see as either a broadcaster or a viewer, somebody who had, I'm going to say it, a great week, or, even in the second part of this, watch this. Some of these guys that I feel either are fixing to have a good week. And no, I don't have ESP. I know where some of these guys feel better at. I kind of reach out during the week and I'll network a little bit to find out, hey man, how you feeling about this? Okay, well that's my strongest track. Wow. I mean, you haven't had a top 10 up until now and this is your best track. So hey, let's watch out for this guy. But look who's got it going on. Obviously, my pick might be a little different than yours, but to me, it was a no-brainer. Randy Arms had a phenomenal week. Had he not got wrecked in that truck race, I honestly believe he could have swept the entire weekend. Obviously took the win Saturday and Sunday after Daniel Smallwood ran a phenomenal race. So I actually put Daniel Smallwood as my second guy on my watch this because he had it there. I mean, he had great runs going, and then at the very last minute, it wasn't enough car or just couldn't make the pass. And I've got to say, I've talked to him a good bit after this, and one of the most laid back, chill people ever. And he's like, you know what? The better guy just won the race. And so, huge props for that because anybody else, I mean, I'd say I'd be kicking and screaming if I lost on the last lap. But once again, I'm a bad sportsman. Third, Mitchell Reeves. It's hard to count this guy out anywhere because, yeah, he might have missed a race, but still, when he shows up, he dominates. Same thing with Justin Michael, who I actually have in fifth because I honestly don't know why, so don't judge me. But I have Kevin Winter marked there on fourth just because I believe he had a great run Thursday night. After all the connection issues and all that stuff finally getting straight, it's good to see the old Kevin Winter back. So, I'm actually going to put them tied for fourth and fifth because that sounds a little bit better. But my Hey Boys, watch this. Definitely tried to shake things up a little bit. First off, I have Jeff Merck. once again, connection issues, server issues, whatever it may be. But Jeff Merck is going to come back, and you will see the old Jeff Merck back in victory lane, getting his top threes, getting his top fives, and I believe it's coming sooner than later. Brandon Thornhill. One, I'm personally proud of the guy because, you know, like I said, I'm very partial to my Misfits. Take that to no offense. It's not favoritism by any means. But Saturday night was a phenomenal finish for Brandon Thornhill. He's had a lot of bad luck, a lot of inconsistent races, but to see him finally come out with that top five was just great. And now that he has a little bit more confidence going in, I feel like that's going to give him a little bit more boost going further into the season. Number three, and I hope he does not judge me on this, but Ronald Klein. Said it before, say it again. This guy, I've got to sit back and kind of watch the admin side. I know he took a break part of last season, so I didn't get to see a lot of racing out of him last season. But this is the first time I've really, really got to see Ron race. And this guy has got serious, serious talent. And I personally underestimated him. So he finally gets a decent finish in, I say decent in the trucks, 12th in the trucks, but 5th in the Xfinity on Saturday night. The guy is going to go places. I just learned you cannot give him pep talks before the race because apparently I'm a curse. Rob Haynes, I have sitting fourth because this guy is just very consistent. And I believe he has that mentality that he's not going to push so much for win as consistency as well as some of our other drivers. But I think on an even playing ground when it comes to, having us in fixed setups, I believe that makes the field a little more even. So you just have to do it a little bit better than the next guy. And I think Rob Haynes can sit back and do that. Mark Jackson, I still have in my top five because, okay, I'll say it. He is doing it for Dale. He has come out just swinging early on this season. Great finishes across all series. And I mean, there's really nothing else you can say about him. He's got it. He's good. He's been doing this a long time. And I think over the next couple of weeks, watch him jump up even further in points because he's going to be there.
All right, Katie, with those who to watch and who's really doing well, a little bit, the same thing that like I went over with a little bit of a PowerPoint last week, but we'll go over to my draft picks for my top 10, however you want to look at them, power rankings. These are mine personally. Thank Katie there for a little bit of a write up on that. You know, Mitch Reeves, Justin Michael, 1 and 2. Hard to pick 1 and 2 there with those guys. I think Mitch Reeves just based on maybe points. I don't know. Who cares? They're 1 and 2 or 2 and 1, whichever way we put them. Randy Arms moves up on my board to third on the top 10 guys here at Loose Lugnuts. Just from a phenomenal week at Richmond. We'll have to see what he does with the rest of the season. He's back in points contention early on. Those are big things for him. Kyle Chadwick, worst race of the season was Saturday. I think he finished 12th or 13th. Back to his normal top 10 on Sunday. He's fourth. Keith Haney still has that win. Still consistently finishes well. I think he's there. Kevin Winter, 6 on my board. He's doing really, really well. He got that win in trucks. Get back up there in points. Mark Jackson, like you mentioned, Katie, finishing really, really well. Finding himself in points contention. And he's there. So I think that my top 7, you'll see them across Katie's boards there too. They're about the same. Now we get into the. It's hard for me to pick 8, 9, and 10 in this league because there's a lot of guys that could fit into those slots. Jack Watts, I'm put up on my number 8 here. He's been finishing really well, very quietly, very well. Same thing with number 9, Brian Abbott. He's down. That's the number 82. He's finishing extremely well, quietly. 2 quiet guys. So they're there. They're going to be there. I want to see Jack Watts, Brian Abbott crack that top 5, maybe get up to podium. Then 10th place, running up that board, just again like Randy Arms did, went 5th to 3rd on my board. Daniel Smallwood cracks the top 10 drivers this week for me. Just, straight up dominating races on Saturday and Sunday. So he's there. Who's going to be in my top 10 next week or the week after? I don't know. We'll have to figure that one out. It's going to be exciting. Let us know what you think about that kind of things. And right here, we're going to go ahead and transfer over to my interview I had with one of these top 10 drivers. That is Justin Michael. All right, Justin Michael here with us for this Lugnut TV interview. Number 87, Justin Michael here with Loose Lugnuts Racing. Well, we got you on board here for an interview. 3 weeks down, special event coming up. Let's go over your first 3 weeks of racing because, they were pretty spectacular, Justin. You got a couple wins in there. You're at the top of some of the points boards. What's been your favorite division to drive in so far?
I tell you the trucks and the Cup Series definitely. The Xfinity Series, I don't plan to run for points, so I like to just have fun in that series, maybe grab some wins here and there. But so that's why we don't really run that competitively on Saturday. But definitely, I mean, I would say the Cup cars is really the shocker for me because I've despised those cars for years, and I didn't really race them for, probably a year or two, and then I quit for a while and came back and started running them again. The new package just really goes to my liking because they handle like the trucks used to. So I would have to say that one's really my favorite so far, but I still love the trucks though.
All right. Well, I mean, we started off California, a nice, good starter track, right? I would say at least. We went over this with Katie and a couple of other guys already. Good starter track, Auto Club. It turned into a little bit more caution than pit stop action. You took away a win there, at least. We got into Las Vegas. You took away a win in Las Vegas, I think, on the truck side of things. So dominant, really quick points. We've given notice by Ronald Klein that we got a drop week coming up. How effective is that going to be? What was your worst finish that you need to wipe away?
The first 2 weeks I would have to say Auto Club when I finished, I think, second or third for the trucks, and obviously we won in the Cup Series. But Vegas for the trucks definitely. 'Cause I think we came away with the top five there, just because of some missed pit strategy at the end with the late caution, and then and in Richmond, of course, we're just terrible all weekend except for the Cup race. So hopefully we don't have to have any more drop races.
Yeah, we officially actually got one more drop race, and that's after Watkins Glen. Uh, I think, are you a strong, racer on the road surfaces, or are you going to expect to need that drop for Watkins Glen?
I mean, I'm going to go into it. Hopefully, I don't have to use it, but I like that it's there. I'm not really a road course racer. I usually road courses and Indy cars. I do a lot better because it's easier to get the power down to the ground. But I've been getting better and better over the past year or two with road courses. So we did the summer series here at Loose Lugnuts, and I was really excited for Sonoma because I always did bad there, and I just kind of read some stuff on how to run road courses, and I mean, I definitely did a lot better than what I used to. I didn't finish that well, got some incidences, but I ran a lot better than I expected.
Yeah, so, I mean, that one was a planned drop race coming up towards Watkins Glen uh, for the purpose, but, we had that, huge drop connection issue at Auto Club week. So there was a second drop race added in across all three divisions. So drivers, if you're listening to this interview out there, you got to plan accordingly. I know you can't make every race. Stuff happens in the real world. Just, do your best. And a lot of people aren't road racers here at Loose Lugnuts Racing. Some are good, some are bad, and some just won't even put up with it. Well, Justin, Richmond, we just actually completed it at the time of this interview. What a week, man. It's what it is going forward. In the rearview mirror, I think you said, right?
Yeah, I'm really glad it's over with. I I don't know what to say. I'm not a short track racer. I don't run good at them. I top five in the Cup race, so that's and for me that's a win. Truck race, we didn't finish that well. I think we were 20 laps down because we got in a wreck there at the end, but we made up a few spots in the last few laps. I think we finished 20th or 21st, and then I didn't finish Saturday after running the top 5 all night. I think 5 to go, 10 to go. We got in a bad wreck there at the end and just couldn't get it fixed in time to come back out and pick up any more spots.
Yeah, so I mean, that goes for a lot of racers too. They just did not do well at Richmond, and I don't blame it. It was a tough track to conquer. The people that conquered it did it each and every night, but that's Justin Michaels racing in a nutshell. You're in it for the points this season. I'm glad to hear that, at least on the truck and the cup side of things. If you look at the schedule, Daytona is the last race before the Chase, and all the races up to it. Uh, let's set aside before we get to Daytona. Is there a track coming up that you expect to do well, or is there a track other than Watkins Glen that's going to give you problems?
Well, I'm looking over the schedule right now since you brought it up, and I'll have to say New Hampshire is not a good track for me, and we saw that in the summer series. And I almost won one of the races. I still don't know how I did that, but I screwed up on the last lap and overdrove 3 and 4 on a restart. So I think that's where Topper won. But I mean, other than that, I'd have to say I'm really looking forward to Dover and Texas. And as much as I hate flat tracks, I do like running Indy as long as the setup's pretty good. So and Talladega and Daytona, we always got a good bunch of teammates, so we always run good there at those tracks. We run competitively, so.
Yeah, but it's going to be a different animal. Last race before the Chase. I think you'll be pretty well up there in points, but there's a lot of good contenders. Guys that, like Kyle Chadwick, he got a win last week in the Cup, but he's normally a guy that just finishes top 5, top 10, like Jeff Gilmore, our Summer Cup Series champion. Guys that, don't make themselves known until the very end. Do you got to worry about that type of points? I mean, your bonus points would be great going into the Chase, but do you got to worry about it going at Daytona and wondering if, I'm 43rd on that field, because I guarantee you we'll get close to fielding that many cars.
Oh, absolutely. That it'll fill up quick, and it'll be a full field for all 3 races at Daytona and even Talladega too. But yeah, going to Daytona, I mean, it really is going to come down to where I am in the points as to how I run. If we're real close, from not making the Chase in any of the series, we're going to take it easy and we're running the back, to the last, quarter of the race and then try to make moves then. If we're, if we're locked in, no problems, who cares where we finish, probably go up and, just run for the win and just have some fun running up front all night.
Yeah, who knows what the strategy is going to be, but I think that you said something crucial there. When the race room becomes available, click that button and get in real quick, because it will be terrible to fill up. Talladega will be the same way. Well, you won the Indy race last year. Has John let you know yet if you have to run the qualifying race coming up into our special event week?
No. I asked him if it was a quote unquote diecast race where the winner gets a diecast, and he said he didn't think it was, and I never heard back. So I'm not sure. I'm going to assume that all that stuff's going to be posted on our Facebook group this week, so I know if I have to run, because if I do, I gotta make some tweaks to my work schedule on Friday to get there and run the qualifying race.
Yeah, Friday will be under the ASN broadcasting banner. A lot of guys, I mean, Travis Browder, uh, gosh, I'm forgetting names, Ronald Klein, out there that have won these things before. Wes Holland, too, won a couple of them. So it'd be interesting to see who has to run the qualifying, because we've had some incredible fields out there, and these guys, won an early season prize. There's diecast for our champions at the end of the season, and then you get a chance to go after a diecast during the season, the Halloween Bash special event. I know you want one. It was probably my fault because I missaid it was a diecast event for that Indy race. So I know you want one. That's a pretty unique prize to have.
Oh, it is absolutely, and if John decides to give me an IndyCar diecast, I'm not gonna complain. I'm just gonna throw that out there, hint, hint. So, But yeah, it would be great to have a diecast. I've always wanted one. The only thing I have is a trophy or like a plaque from, I don't know, 5 years ago from a series that I raced in with my picture of my truck on it from winning the championship series. So that's kind of cool to look at when I come downstairs.
Yeah, and so that's coming up for Justin Michael and the rest of the league. We kind of skipped over. I mean, you've been running Loose Lugnuts now for probably a while, off and on. You're going after your first points title. You're getting up there in wins. It's pretty easy to get up there towards the top 5 in wins all time. Wes Holland's number's probably a little bit too high for most to get at. However, uh, you're clicking off wins, looking at points. Where did Justin Michael come from in iRacing, at least, to get to this point that you are now, that you're ready to go after those points, ready to hit those win marks week in and week out?
I tell you, I've been racing sim racing, way before iRacing was a thing. I think in the mid '90s is when I started. It was NASCAR 1, 2, 3, 2003, and whatever other Papyrus sim was out there. I used to run, so however many years that is from 1995 to now. But I started and I took a long break. I don't know, for 4 or 5 years, and then I found iRacing again because I was watching NASCAR and they were talking about it. So I decided to join back up. I ordered a G27 wheel, and I used a laptop for I think a MacBook actually for a long time before I
Wow.
got a Windows laptop. Oh yeah, and everybody asks me, like, after you start winning a lot, what's your setup? What are you doing? Like, do you have triple monitors? Do you have VR? What are you doing? I have a 27-inch monitor, single monitor. I still run G27. I don't even use my H shifter. I use paddle shifters. I don't use a clutch. So it's not about it's not about your gear and your setup. It's really not. It's all about practicing. And I practice a lot, whether it be with you guys or hosted with other people and whatnot. But people just don't get that. You practice, you're gonna get better. That's all it is.
No, it's definitely interesting to hear. So you're still running the G27 on a single monitor. Probably, got a decent enough computer to hold TeamSpeak in the background while you're doing it. Uh, Dude, it's amazing because you're a hell of a driver. I figured, like, most of us out here, like, I went and got a cheap wheel to start, went up to the 27. Uh, I had the clutch with the pedal, then got an H pattern shifter. Now I'm over the G29. I don't race anymore right now as being in the booth, but like you said, it's an amazing progression. And then you just stopped at the G27.
I
Uh,
tell you, it's a good wheel. It works, and I want to point out one thing: you don't race anymore. I think all the announcers, you should have a race one time, and all the drivers call it. Just throwing that out there for later. But back to the wheel real quick. Yeah, I use a G27. I use an 8. I don't use my H pattern shifter. I have it there because I still use the buttons and stuff. But and you're gonna laugh at this, but my pedals, it has the clutch, the brake, and the gas. I don't use the brake. I remap the brake to the clutch because the brake is just too close to the gas pedal for me. So, I use the clutch for my brake at every track. I never touch the actual brake pedal itself. And yeah, I do use auto clutch. I mean, I'll tell everybody I don't care, you know.
oh, I use auto clutch on the G29. I didn't like the H pattern didn't fit on my desk after I made the move and a new desk and all that, upgrades. But it it still amazes me. Like, you're running single monitor. The greatest racer I ever raced with was Wes Holland, who won a ton of races here at Loose Lugnuts Racing, over 100 official races on the Dan Elisa page. He used a single monitor too. Is there, like, are you using tricks? Are you widening in the corners, trying to get the full amount of your screen? Or are you just so used to that setup?
I mean, at this point, I'm just so used to it. I use the whatever the default view percentage is what I use. I don't even know what that is off the top of my head, but I don't adjust myself forward or backwards. Actually, it's my understanding because I messed with that at one point. If you move backwards, the track goes faster in your mind, so it's harder to race. If you go closer, it slows it down, so it's a little easier to race. So from what I'm told, but I just leave the view default. That's just the kind of person I am. I get in there, I run it, I'm used to it. I don't want to change it.
Now, why change when you got a winning strategy there? Well, Justin, you know, outside of Lugnuts, you said you raced hosted? I'm sure there's a few other leagues that you've put down time at. I know of one in particular that I won't mention, but we'll yeah, skip over that. Everyone knows. I'm just not gonna say it. But so is it a ton of time, or you like when I was racing and racing well? I was doing 30 minutes a night on race, not on race nights. On race nights, I was probably putting in 2 hours before a race.
I mean, so when I first started iRacing, I race a lot more than what I do now, and that kind of plateaued there. I don't know, maybe a year or two after I started, and I think it was actually got to the point where it made my wife mad because I was racing too much. So I backed it down a little bit, but at that time I got my seat time in. I understood how things work, how to save tires and stuff like that. So you can back it off a little bit after that. Still not a lot though. You still need to get seat time into just for muscle memory. So um, it just I would have to say now, um, I race with you guys 2 to 3 times a week, and then every once in a while I race with my teammates on Fridays if I'm home in time, and just here and there, I'll pick up a race every once in a while, but it's not as much anymore. I just with my work schedule, when I move to a new store, it just I work a lot, make a lot of money doing it, but I work a lot, so I don't get a lot of time for play anymore.
Well, you hear it, people. Get your seat time where you can fill it, then bounce. That's a similar story with me, Justin. Too much seat time in the beginning. Wife made me back down a bit. Now finding that level portion of racing and home activity. Uh, so that's always fun. And well, we've had a good little talk here, Justin. You know, at the end of each race, we like to shout out sponsors and whatnot. Do you got anyone on board? I know you run the 511 tactical on the machine all the time. Anyone else out there rooting you on? Teammates, anyone you want to call out?
Yeah, we run 511 Tactical. I use their book bags and stuff, so I always like to anything that I use in real life. I always like to throw in a car just for support. I've always had gun stuff on my cars, things like that, and I always will. So it's just something I always support and I'm very passionate about. But my friend Darren out there, he's been watching every race, this season, even some on the last broadcast season we had. So he watches sometimes. I have a friend Dan. He watches every once in a while from work, and Henry. My guys, my teammates. Chris Voiles, Wally Tierheimer. They're good guys. I gotta say, Wally's always my crew chief because I never know how many laps a tank of gas will go, and I always have to ask him 3 or 4 laps into a race. I was like, hey, Wally, how many laps can we go on gas? Because I have no idea. So he's always a good guy and helps me out a lot.
Yeah, well, yeah, big shout out to Wally. I remember getting into rooms sometimes and putting down the fast time, then figuring out the line and the long run, uh, which better way to use your tires and the corners, and then all of a sudden the green flag drops and you're like, how many laps are we going? How many how many gallons we got on board? Teammates are very helpful. Thank you, Wally. Chris Voiles out there uh, with the Bandit team. Well, Justin, good interview here with you. Thanks for coming over to Lugnut TV tonight and after a strong night of racing. We wish you luck going forward, man. I know you're going to be a points contender. 87 machine is going to be out there being fast. You're going to click off wins real quick before we let you go. What's your next win?
I mean, I'm hoping it's the rest of the tracks, but realistically, let's any of the cookie cutter tracks. I'm like Charlotte and all that Chicagoland. I'm good at, so I really love running those tracks. Pocono's okay. I don't expect to run up front the whole time, so I mean we'll see. But Charlotte, hopefully, I'm going to be a contender there. And Talladega and Daytona, of course, we're always running up there with everybody. But I'd have to say hopefully Charlotte.
All right, well, Charlotte's in 2 weeks. Maybe we see the 87 there in the winner's circle before, but we'll end this interview here with Justin Michael tonight. We'll go back over to our regular programming here. After talking with Justin Michael there, thanks to him for coming over doing that interview with us. Katie, we got the Halloween thing. We got Pocono coming up. That's a little bit worrisome. A caution at Pocono could take forever, like a caution at Bristol would. But, I think Ronald Klein's going to do well at Pocono. I think our usual driver's going to do well. I'm looking, again, for an outside driver to come up at Pocono. I think if you found a groove and started practicing right after our Halloween race at Dega, you could do really well. Xfinity and truck side, cup side, I don't know what's going to happen. I think tire fall off is going to be within the first couple laps, but it could be quite an interesting race in the cup side at the top. Gosh, I said Ronald Klein. I think Brandon Murray's right on it. Top's right on the outside of things. Uh, I always like to pick Chris Shaw and Jeff Gilmore as quiet contenders. So I really want to see one of those back marker guys really step it up and go. What's your thoughts on Pocono going forward?
Well, I've heard straight out of the 33's mouth that he is dreading it because he's terrible at Pocono. But, I've seen him dedicate so much time and so much practice into this, and I probably say it week in and week out. But, the amount of time that he takes and puts into this just floors me. I mean, going from working on actual race cars and doing this, the hours you have to pour into it. This is the same exact thing. If you don't practice and get familiar with your wheel, your pedals, your setup, and the wheel time and seat time, you're not going to prevail at this. You're going to make these, dumb mistakes. One little slip up can cost you or potentially somebody behind you. I can't say a championship right now because we're so early on, but you get to running in the chase and, like I said, one small hiccup can mess up just about anybody's night. So practice, 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 regardless. I know parents say it all the time, but if I've learned anything from talking to some of these, peak drivers over the last couple of weeks, wheel time, seat time, it makes the world of difference.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and end it here on the podcast this week. Again, shout out to Katie for joining us as always. Our sponsor is Abruzzi Racewear USA, your wear, your way. Pit Pass by Katie Dugas. Go check her out on Facebook. The pre-race shows on ASN and Max Speed TV. The write-ups that she's going to be working on once we're done recording this. Support our truck series. We always support our troops out there. Veterans Day coming up. Take a moment, talk to your kids about veterans and the sacrifices that they go through. Over the top paints and designs. Always Max Speed TV, ASN. Let's racegear.com before I forget them. All the stuff will be linked in the description. Thank you everyone for joining us again this week. Shout out to Ron and John keeping us going week to week. All you drivers that attend the race, make this race league go round. Take care, everyone. Stay dry out there in the south, and we'll see everyone next time.